ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
We are back. We are back for yet another. And guess this, it's our season finale.
Yes.
Yay.
And I know we've been missing for a couple of months, but we've been off celebrating birthdays and Thanksgiving. And so we're back. One
And
more.
only 1 month, only 1 month.
That's it. Well, has it been a
Just not even, I don't think a total month, but
It seems longer.
It does. It really does. So tonight is part two of church hurt, sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse, and generational curses. And we have back with us tonight Coach Janet Lynn Boswell. Coach Janet, you
yes.
want to just briefly tell everybody again who you are for those who may not have caught the first half of this show.
Sure. So I am a licensed, a certified trauma recovery coach and a minister. um, and as a trauma recovery coach, it's more of a peer-led model. And it allows me to be able to, where appropriate, share aspects of my recovery journey with my clients. That's the reason why I chose that particular uh, certification. And and as a minister, I'm always sharing and speaking and talking about that anyway, so it really was a good fit. And oftentimes people will come up to me afterward, and just ask about my recovery process, or if there's a way that I can help them. And so then I'm able to sort of transition into that and say, well, actually, you know, I'm certified in trauma recovery coaching, and here's my information. So the two kind of go hand in hand for me. And also, I am completing a certification as a theophostic prayer minister, in theophostic prayer ministry. Theos meaning God, phos is light, and it's a modality where you help the client identify any lies that they have been believing,
Mm-hmm.
primarily about themselves,
Yes.
and then help them to go to God and um, sort of receive the truth. What is the truth in this? And use that truth to counteract the lie. So
Mm, that
that's
sounds
what I
very,
do.
that sounds very
Yeah,
interesting. Very interesting.
that's good.
Hmm.
So I'm so excited. I mean, every time I hear all that you do, um, it just gives me so much inspiration, because so many times we just don't understand how powerful it is to help people move through their trauma.
Hmm.
And as we talked about in the last show, we talked about um church spiritual trauma, which we call church hurt, and sexual trauma and generational trauma. And I think that show was so good, because we began to just talk about how people experience church hurt, and then it circled around to different things that happen as a result of things that happen at church. So what I wanted
Mhm.
to do is get, if you don't mind, if you could give us a little summary of that before we go on to our next part two.
So a summary of what we sort of talked about last time.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. So we talked about, as far as the church hurt, we talked about the fact that oftentimes we have people in leadership positions who maybe have not worked through their own trauma,
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so we have what we call hurt people hurting people.
Exactly.
And so that happens a lot of times. Also, I think it would be beneficial for us, in our churches to become more trauma informed. We
Mm.
didn't really
Yeah.
talk about this last time, but and you're seeing it more and more, but just understanding leadership, understanding that you're having people come through the doors that have wounded souls,
Yes.
you
Mhm.
Yes.
know and so how can we create an emotionally and mentally safe and spiritually safe environment for them? I think oftentimes it's just having that awareness.
Yes, definitely.
And I believe that is something that is lacking because, and I guess it also goes back to the type of church one goes to, because there's some preachers that preach and there's some preachers that teach, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's a big difference, because if somebody's preaching at you, they may
Mhm.
not necessarily be teaching you how to apply the word to your everyday life, or how to use it to help you get through whatever it is you're going through. You know,
Mhm.
you can hear all day long that you're going to hell, or, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. These are just some common cliches that you sometimes hear in churches. But if you don't know how to apply certain things, to apply the word to your life, then you won't benefit and you won't be able to begin to heal and grow.
And
That
that is so true because teaching or preaching has to have a substance that
Mhm.
leads you into the directions on how to
Right.
apply the word. So I
Mhm.
get what you're saying when you're talking about that preaching aspect, because some preaching aspect that you take one scripture and you just
Right.
keep preaching, preaching, preaching on that one scripture, and telling stories and all without any type of guidance or instruction to how to get to the point of the victory in the word of God.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate you saying that, because that's the difference. That's the key right there, is being able to find out how.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. That is, I'm so glad you said that.
Mhm.
Listen, that's my whole reason for being, is helping people understand the practicality of the
Yes.
word of God
Exactly.
and
Yes.
how to apply it to the issues that I'm experiencing.
Yes.
Mhm.
I used to drive my kids crazy when they were little because I can find a scripture that relates to anything in life, anything they're dealing with. So anything they would say to me, I would say, well, but what I was trying to do was teach them
Yes. How to
that
apply it.
yes, how to apply
Practical
it, that
life.
it is relevant and practical there
Yes.
to your everyday life. And they were like, okay, here we go. And the way that I do that, now when I'm speaking and teaching and coaching, is by sharing the psychological side, and how there, to me, in my mind, there's not a separation between the psychological and the spiritual.
Mhm.
Maybe it's because I'm a combination of them, but to me, because um psychology, if you look up the definition of psychology, at its core, it is the study of the mind and the emotions,
Mhm.
aka the what? The soul,
So
the
that's right.
mind, the
Mhm.
mind, emotions, and will. So psychology is the study of the soul. And if you believe that God created the soul,
Mm-hmm.
that he breathed his breath into your soul, then there is no separation. But like you said, it's just that we have to teach people. And if you're just preaching a generic word
Yes.
over and over again, and this is what used to frustrate me when I was younger, is I, I couldn't understand why I knew so much of the Bible, but I couldn't get breakthrough.
Mm,
You
And I
just
would,
knew how to
Yes.
quote it.
yes.
yes, I'm like, I know what the word says, but I don't know how to apply it to what I'm dealing with. And so it's so true. We have to teach people how to apply. When I learned to apply the word specific scriptures to specific situations,
Mhm.
that's when I started getting breakthrough.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. So I'm going to assume that you've experienced church hurt.
I have, yes, yes,
What
I have.
happened? You care to share?
I'll tell you one major situation, and it involved a person in leadership, and it was a person who. So I grew up because I was sexually violated at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
I never really learned how to set boundaries,
Mhm.
personal boundaries,
Right.
and didn't even know that I had a right to and that it was okay to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so this person in leadership, was able to pick up on that, oh, she has no real boundaries. So I
Mhm.
can kind of slide in there, and violate them, and really started sort of a grooming process. Thankfully, I had the Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew in my spirit
That wasn't right.
something about this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And even though it was terrifying for me to confront the situation, I was able to do that by the grace of God. I was able to do that, and sort of, but it hurt me. It really it hurt me. Um, I was able to, because I had had a intimate relationship with the Lord already for so long. I did not equate the person with God. You know what I'm saying? I did not. I was able to realize this is this person, but it still did damage. It
Yes.
still did damage. Um, and when I learned, so one of the things I wanted to talk about when we talk about coaching and healing,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first things to me, because knowledge is power, it
Yes.
really is.
Yes.
And so in coaching, we teach a lot of self awareness
Mhm.
and a lot of what we call psychoeducation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I learned about grooming, because if you don't know what grooming is, you never even heard the term, you don't know that it's happening to you,
Exactly.
So when I began to learn, this is what grooming is, and
Mm-hmm.
this is what some hurt people who are hurting other people do. That learning things like that help me to know, oh, and then being able to connect the dots back to how I was set up
Mm-hmm.
for
Mhm.
grooming as an adult by being groomed as a child.
Mm.
Also helped me to get freedom from it, because knowledge is power.
That's right.
And
That's
so when
exactly.
you talk about, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying that's right.
when you talk about grooming,
Mm.
because we keep saying grooming, but for somebody who's listening,
Mm.
grooming is actually when someone intentionally uses steps to get you to do what they want to do. So it seems it's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
It may start with them just saying, "Hey, how you doing?"
That's
And then eventually they get you engaged in conversation.
mm-hmm.
Then they ask you questions like, I see you come to church all by yourself all the time. Do you sometimes might need help with anything? Or even maybe a prayer partner or something. So it's
Mhm.
very subtle, it's
Yeah.
gradual, and most
Mhm.
of the times it is connected, although not so that we make sure we don't get it twisted. It's not godly, but we think it's godly
Mm-hmm.
because they connected.
Right.
And so, like, they may say, let's pray together, let's do this together in the
Mhm.
name of God. And they even may even use scriptural basis
Mm-hmm.
when certain things occur that you feel a little funny about.
Mhm.
And when it's not in the church,
Mm-hmm.
it's things like taking you out to dinner as an adult, and then telling you you're friends, but then they happen to touch your leg, and you're like, friends don't touch your leg.
Right.
And the
Mhm.
next time when they give you a hug, they hug you lower than what is comfortable to your comfort zone, and so on and so on. And we can go on if you like to have more information on exactly what grooming is. I would ask you to reach out to any of us on this panel tonight, on this show
Mhm.
tonight, and we can tell you, because even with kids, it may start with a candy, or let me give you a star because you made a good grade on your homework, and
Exactly.
you're seen as the nice person, the person
Mhm.
who has interest in me, the person who wants to help me grow or has some type of good intention towards me.
Mhm.
I would just like to add the key component in that whole grooming thing is they're getting you to trust them on a level.
Correct.
So
Yes.
once they feel that they have that trust in you, then that's when they swoop in and you and then you're hurt, especially if you don't know any better. But then you think this person cared for me, this person loved me, this person whatever, and so
Mhm.
confused at that point because you, like you say, you have this feeling that something is just not right.
Correct.
You're confused, but a part of that whole grooming thing is getting you to trust them so that you will go somewhere with them alone, so that you would, and then they'll tell you stuff. Well, can't tell nobody, because if you tell somebody, then we gonna get in trouble. So you trust in this person, so you're not even gonna say anything, even if you feel like it's wrong. So,
Mhm.
and um like Dr. Sean said,
Mhm.
when if you, especially with online dating and children and things being online, it's a lot of pedophiles out there, a lot.
Correct.
And that's their MO. That's how they start. They start
Mhm.
just like that. And then
Mhm.
they you build up this trust, and the next thing you know, your 14, 15-year-old child is sneaking out the house to go meet these people.
Yes.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And you don't know
Mhm.
what's going on because they done been groomed so well that they're not even going to tell you that they're going to meet some 20-something-year-old man that they done met
Mhm.
online. But I don't
Mhm.
want to get off the subject. I just wanted to add that them getting you to trust them is a major component in that whole thing.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. And imagine if you're a church leader, you're in that authority position, and you can spot someone who maybe is isolated
Mm-hmm.
or who maybe is looking for attention
Mm-hmm.
or
Yes.
affection, or so and then that can set up the beginning of that whole process. For
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. You know,
Absolutely.
I went through not that, but I started my journey with God back in 2009. Now let me just say that um I was born and raised in church, right?
Mhm.
But when you're a child and you're carted off to church and
You're
Sunday
just
school, and
going.
you're just going because you don't know any better. You're just going because you have to go. So when you
Mm-hmm.
get to an age where you don't have to go, you kind of do that whole, oh, I am going to church today. And you turn into the heathen, right? You got mamas and daddies like, I done raised you better than that. But so when I was, brought up. So when I rededicated my life and I was going back to church, one of the assistant pastors wanted me to be her armor bearer. And she was just really a sneaky person. I'm not going, call out names or anything,
Of
get
course not.
into specific. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing really stuck out in my mind that kind of made me feel like, yeah, I'm about to get up out of church because the people in the church ain't no better than the people out there on the streets. We were preparing for our Women's Day ministry. And I'm a creative soul, right? I write poetry, I do newsletters and things like that. So I was like, well, this is what I can do. I can create the program in the newsletter and, write a couple of poems and this, that, and the third. So they was like, oh, sure, sure, sure. So I get everything together, send the little sample off to the assistant pastor or co-pastor or minister. I'm not gonna call her pastor. She was a minister under, because I'm not sure the hierarchy, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
she used to preach and she was up there, right? So I sent it to her so that she can get approval from the pastor to make sure everything was okay. So she came back to me at a later date and said, "Oh, we don't need it. We're not going to be using it. Whatever, whatever, whatever." I was like, "Okay, fine." But on the day of the Women's Day program, I get to church and they're passing out. Guess what?
Your information.
My information.
Of course.
They're passing it, and I was like, I just felt so deflated, and she got all of the credit. And I know that's nothing compared to what, some people go through,
Oh, mm.
but it was
No, that's a big deal.
That is.
so it
And
was.
and it causes people, see, I'm glad you brought that up, because church hurt is not just about maybe somebody taking advantage of someone physically. Church
Mm-hmm.
hurt is so many different things that happen. So for
Mm-hmm.
you felt like someone stole from you at the church and then made you feel less than,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they used your information, because when you asked about it, they were like, it wasn't good enough. In essence, it
Right.
wasn't good enough, we're not going to use it. And then
Mm-hmm.
to see, you began to feel like, wow, this is what I know will happen at jobs when people are being cutthroat, and I
Mhm.
never thought it would happen at church. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another type of church hurt. Another type of
Mm-hmm.
church hurt that people experience um could be even like, you come into church and you don't have the best clothing. You don't have, you might have even just came from sleeping on the street, but you needed to
Mm-hmm.
find God,
Mhm.
and you come in and the usher gives you a look and wants to put you on the back seat, and now
Mm-hmm.
you feel judged
Mm.
by the church.
Mm.
The
Mm-hmm.
church is supposed to love you. God said, come as you are. But
Mm-hmm.
Right.
when you came as you were, you felt like you should have went to Belk's first and stopped in the bathroom at the IHOP and washed yourself and all, so that
Mm-hmm.
you would be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, church hurt can be so many things, because people come to the church expecting to be safe. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it is that, yes, there are many good churches out there, and there are many churches that you might not even experience church hurt in. However, what we have to realize, because we want to make sure no one thinks we're church bashing, and that's not what we're doing.
Mm-mm.
We're just letting you know that if you've experienced this, we're there. We understand. But what you have to understand when you're attending church is that a church is full of sick people. The church
That's
is the
right.
hospital.
That's right.
So people are coming who need healing, who
Mm-hmm.
need they're looking for things just like you're looking for things. And
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to be fulfilled just like you are. Now, in the midst of all of that, some people come and are, yes, have the wrong intentions. But like we said in the beginning, hurt people hurt people. So if I'm Sister Susie and I'm hurting and I haven't finished, and then you ask me a question that you misread me and think I'm trying to be funny or trying to undermine your authority, you might go off on me. And
Mm.
then that
Mm-hmm.
might set me like at the church, and that could shut me down. So it could be
Mm-hmm.
so many small things, but we don't understand that Sister Susie was just had a situation where everybody was doubting things
Mm-hmm.
that she was doing and was saying that she doesn't know how to relate to the congregation as an usher. And then you, the next Sunday, came and asked Sister Susie, "Well, please, can I sit over here? Why must I sit over there?" And it's so much can happen. And with that being said, I want us to get into how do we heal from that when we go to some place that we feel is safe?
Mm-hmm. And so I feel like, well, two things, and that's why I was saying, as one of my missions is that as churches, we need to become more transparent. As the leaders, as the people who are serving, we need to become more transparent so people know that, okay, I'm coming into this place, but these people aren't perfect either. The more real we can be about our lack of perfection and having it all together, the more comfortable someone can feel coming in. So I think that's really very important. But if I had a client who had experienced some type of church hurt, probably the first question that I would ask him, or one of the first, is kind of what I said before. It would be, when they would say, see, that's why I hate church people, because they're all hypocrites and this and that and the other. Well, first of all, I would explain to them that, they've probably gone through things too, and they're wherever they are in their own healing process. But I would probably ask them, did a person do that, or did people do that, or did God do that, or did God do that, or did people do that? Because for me, being able to make that separation
Yes, that's important.
was very key.
That's right.
Because then it caused me, I didn't feel the need to leave God, or leave whatever so it was a very, but I was angry with God. And even as we talk about the childhood sexual abuse, and I said, God, I don't understand why you allowed that to happen to me. You could have prevented it,
Mm-hmm.
or at the very least you could have stopped it where it didn't last so long. And what I heard in my spirit him say was, and it's that whole separation thing, he said, but I didn't do that to you, people did.
Yes.
What that meant to me was that people have a free will. We
Yeah.
all do.
Yes.
And we can choose, to use our powers for good, or, use our powers for evil. We all have that choice. So either if we all have free will, either you want God to take away everybody's free will, only certain people, and how do you choose? So oftentimes we blame God for things that hurt and traumatized and unhealed people have done.
Yes.
So that would be one of my first questions, I think, would be. But also, I think it's always important to have a safe place where you can express these things,
Mhm.
because we don't even talk about this stuff.
No,
Mhm.
you're right. You're absolutely right.
So how many people are walking around offended, devastated, abused, traumatized by things that happened while they were in church, going to church, and they don't feel like they can share it with anyone.
So, I find that most people, and I'm guilty of it, when they experience church hurt at a particular church,
They
they'll
leave.
just leave and go to another church. So
Mhm.
those are the ones that I like to call church hoppers. They go one couple of years, they a member at this church, a couple of years they're a member at that church. Now they over here at that church, and then now they over there because they're still seeking and they're searching.
Mhm.
And so you're right. A lot of people don't talk about it. They just be like, okay, I don't even have to go to that church anymore. And
Yeah.
and my fear is it will always be that what happens if you go to 2 or 3 churches and every time you go to a new church you experience some form of church hurt, then what? Right. And I wholeheartedly agree with you with the separation, but I think, and I can only speak from personal experiences when things have happened to me, um, be it in church, out of church, just in my life. I've gone through some things, as we all have. It's a natural emotion to say, God, why? Right?
Mhm.
And we want to. And I like to think before I knew better, and I just had some knowledge, but not full knowledge. I felt like, okay, well, they say, um, if it happened, he allowed it to happen, which is why you say, oh, why did God let this happen to me? Not knowing that people have, like you said, free will.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They have the free will to do whatever it is that they choose to do.
Mhm.
So it's not so much as God allowing it to happen, but when you're raised a certain way and you hear again this certain cliches and certain scriptures and you think, okay, well, God let this happen. No, God did not. But you don't know, people don't know any better because all they know is, well, they say, God controls everything. And so God could have, why God didn't stop it from happening, right? They
Mhm.
don't have full knowledge of his will, your will, or his perfect will and his permissive will. See, it's a
Mhm.
lot of things that people don't know. So, in helping somebody to deal with it, I think the breakdown would come in when you start to teach people, like you said, okay, God didn't do it, this person did it, and this is why, because we have free will and things of
Mhm.
that nature, you know.
And
And I
just
think we also
no, go ahead.
have to look at the fact that when we start church hopping, let's be real, we're already on guard.
Yeah.
When we go
Mhm.
to that next church, we already like,
Oh, the first one look at me wrong, I'm out of here.
okay. So we we are already, because we didn't heal from that first
Yes.
offense. And
Mhm.
so when we carry offense along with us to another place, we're
Mhm.
just entering another building with still yet imperfect humans.
Yes.
So then that second offense could be this small, but
Mm,
it is magnified
yes.
because
Mhm.
you already upset at Sister Susie at the last church.
Right.
Right.
So I think that when we're talking about, how do we get over this? We have to start with some basic things like And everybody might not be ready.
Right.
You might not be ready to forgive. You might not, and forgiveness is twofold because
Mhm.
many times we're trying to figure out, what did I do? How did I let this happen? How was I so naive? Why would I give somebody all of my, like for your instance, why would I give somebody all of my ideas and
Mhm.
not ask for a meeting with the pastor myself?
Right.
Why would I allow myself to get to the point in which I did with this person who violated me when I felt the red flags? So one of the first things we need to do, which is not an easy process, is forgive ourselves. We
That's
hear
right.
the scripture all the time that
That's
there's no condemnation.
That's right.
You are not condemned. But again, going back to applying, what does that
Mhm.
mean? What does it mean? Therefore, there is no condemnation. What does that
Mhm.
mean? That means that God doesn't condemn you. That
That's right.
means that if you go to Him and you ask Him, if I did something wrong, please forgive me, then He no longer sees you as anybody bad or anyone in sin or anyone like that. And then if we flip it on the flip side, we want God to forgive us, and He does, but then we'd say, but I'm still a terrible person. And
Mhm.
we walk around with
Mhm.
this shame and this guilt and
Mhm.
these feelings of betrayal and rejection and all of these things that we haven't dealt with.
And
So
that's the key.
mhm,
That's the key, and that's why I think we need to talk about it. That's
yes.
why we have to talk about these things,
Mhm.
because, how can you even get to that place when we're not even talking about it?
hmm and,
And
and
so in trauma, oh, I'm sorry, were you, I
no,
didn't
no,
mean
I was just like, yeah, you have to talk about it. You
to
have to talk about it.
because that in trauma recovery coaching, for me, that would be one of the psychoeducation pieces, because then I would teach the person about our different parts, and that there's a part of you that we call the inner critic.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So that inner critic, anytime you feel like you have made a mistake or messed up, that inner critic is going to be right there, loud and proud and in charge.
Screaming.
Obnoxious. It's gonna be obnoxious about it.
Obnoxiously. Yes. So then that goes to, when we talk about the inner child work and the parts work, and you learning to, and I can say for me, I have gotten to the place of being able to say to, yes, and talk to myself and
hmm
say to that inner critic, I call it IC, say to
Yes.
IC, um, I know that you're trying to protect me, because that really is what it is. I
Mhm.
am trying to protect you from making the same mistake again, or I'm trying to prepare you for any fallout that may result
Mhm.
from this mistake, when it's really, being human. Um, and be able to say, but you know what? And then, like you said, there is no condemnation. I trusted this person. I didn't know that I couldn't trust this
Correct.
person. Here's why I didn't know that I could, because people like this have been in my life from day one.
Right.
So how would I know? And just really compassionately walking myself through that condemning sort
hmm
of voice. And that's what I would do with a client as well.
hmm And so it's good that you said that because you're right. You have to walk yourself through it.
That's right.
And then when you're talking about saying, why couldn't I recognize that? So the funny part is one of the first stages of forgiveness, whether it's yourself or anybody else, is you acknowledging, hey,
That's right.
This is what happened to me. This is why I'm upset.
That's right.
And this is who I'm mad at. If it's
Mhm.
yourself, if it's somebody else, and I'm mad at you. And so
Yes.
sometimes,
Absolutely.
like you say, people are not ready for the full forgiveness. But when you're talking about it, sometimes it take you screaming
Yes.
out. Like we have a process in therapy called the empty chair.
Mm-hmm.
So that empty chair represents whoever. And so it's like you are talking to this chair, but this chair represents all of those who violated,
Yes.
betrayed, offended you, and you
Mm-hmm.
just scream and you say whatever. You can even write a letter to the empty chair. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like for example, Nisi writes, she might just need to write it all out. Because she's not going to be ready until she process everything that's hidden in those creeks and crevices that we tend to try to cover up and
Mhm.
pull together and just look pretty and
Right.
mask over. But you got to bring it to the forefront and be like, whoo, this is it.
That's right. Because what they say, the truth will set you free.
Right.
Yes.
And that means being truthful with yourself by
Yes.
acknowledging
Right.
what happened,
Yes. To thine own self be true above all else.
Yes.
above
And
all else. That's right.
you have to be, and we think that we can't, it's we can't tell God I'm mad at you, or I don't understand, or this or that, but you absolutely can.
Yes, you can.
You absolutely
Yes, you
Yes,
can.
you can.
and what's my thing is, what sense does it make to pretend like I don't feel a certain way that I already feel?
Right.
So
And God
I'm
already knows it. He already knows you feel that
He
way.
knows it.
So the only person you lying to is yourself.
Is
That's why they say
yourself.
one of the most dangerous persons you could ever deal with is somebody that believes their own lies.
Oh
That's right.
my. Oh my. Yeah. Yeah. What do we call that? Narcissism?
Yeah. Narcissism. Yes. Yes. And
I
it's
don't
a
know if that's
problem
quite
out
the
here.
definition, but we can.
Close enough, right? Oh my goodness.
Not for everybody. Not everybody will fall under that.
So with the sexual abuse piece, because you were being groomed, so how were you able to overcome that or get through that? Did you um confront the person that did it, or did you just like move on and say,
So that's such a good question. First of all, it started with what we were just talking about. First of all, I had to acknowledge it.
mm-hmm,
Because since it happened at a very early age, I had some memories, but for the most part, it was blacked out.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I had to feel safe enough in an environment where I could first acknowledge it.
okay,
Once I acknowledged it, by the time I acknowledged it, I call the primary abuser, was dead and gone.
Mm,
So what I did was write the letter. And
mm-hmm,
I actually had to end up writing a few letters because it was in stages,
mm-hmm,
But I wrote, and just that freedom of being able to finally express and just put it out there that you did this to me, and even be able to say, and because I felt like I hate you for doing this, not censoring myself in any kind of way, because like we just said, what sense does it do for me to deny feeling a way if I already feel that way?
that's right. That's right.
How can God ever help me move through it if I'm denying it, right?
right,
So
Mhm.
I just let it all out. in the freedom that I felt, because I had always been one who was made to feel like you don't get to express
Mm-hmm.
how you feel. You just better make us feel good about, ourselves. And so just being able to do that did so much for me. It really did. That's why I say self-awareness, and maybe call it self-expression,
Mm-hmm.
um, are two keys. So important. And then after that, I had to start connecting the dots of how what you did has affected me
Yes, that's
throughout my
stage 2.
life.
How did it impact you?
Mhm.
Yes.
And we kind of talked last week about how it's so hard. People, number one, they don't want to get any type of coaching or counseling,
Right.
because they feel like it's a stigma attached
Mm-hmm.
to it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I've met a lot of people who feel like I was saying earlier, that it's not spiritual to do, which I completely, disagree with that, because it's talking about our soul, and God made our souls. And I always say, so I want to find out how what he made is supposed to work. And if something is hindering it, then I want to find out what that is.
Yes, right. And be
So,
able to
oh,
help them overcome. Go ahead. I was saying, and just be able to help them overcome what is hindering them.
yeah, exactly.
And what's funny about that is I always, when clients come to me, I say, wow, you really think that you're not supposed to come to a counselor, and your family tells you you're not supposed to come to a counselor? And they say yes. And then I say, okay, well, why? Why do they tell you that? They say, because, you're supposed to be able to go to God with your trouble. And I say, okay, yeah, well, I think what's funny to me is that when God made this the whole body, the chemicals and fluids that flow through this whole body
Mm-hmm.
are all interconnected. I said, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm confused at how you can stop right here. So right here, you can go, you can see the doctor, you can, if your liver not working,
Come
if
on.
whatever, you can get all of that fixed. I
Right.
said, oh, and then I say, oh, I forgot. Wait a minute. You might need some glasses.
Hello.
You might need a hearing aid.
Hello.
You
Mm-hmm.
might need your teeth fixed.
Mm-hmm.
But but this part
Your
of
head.
your body is not covered under God saying that you can use the professionals that He has taught and trained, just like a doctor,
Yeah.
to help you deal with this. And I said, that is where I'm asking you some questions like, it's the same kind of fluids and all. So when you have diabetes, your sugar is off, your insulin is off in your body.
Mm-hmm.
When you have high blood pressure, there's an imbalance. I said, and in your head, when you're depressed,
Mm-hmm.
when you have anxiety, when you have different things going on because of thoughts and life experience that's occurred, there is an imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to get someone to help you. So think of this. I'm getting ready to give you the diet for
Mm-hmm.
your brain. I'm getting ready to give you exercises for your brain
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
so that you can be healthy. And if you cannot get enough of the diet and exercise, I am going to tell you to go get some medicine, just
Mm-hmm.
like the doctor say, for your brain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they say, oh, I say, same thing.
Same thing. But you know what?
Oh.
Let me just add, but that goes back to what I said earlier, how when people are raised a certain way to think a certain way, because they tell you, take your cares, take it to the altar, leave it at the altar, talk
Mm-hmm.
to God in prayer. And once you pray on it, let it go, leave it alone. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the people that will say to you, well, yeah, I talk to God. I don't need a coach. I don't need a counselor. I don't need
Mhm.
this, because they're not fully aware of the knowledge that, yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot going on and you need somebody that has been down that road, has some experience that can help you identify, help you put a plan together to execute and overcome so that you can see through to the other side so that you could become an overcomer, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you don't understand that because, again, well, I, like she said, I talked to God. I prayed on it and I left it
Mhm.
alone. No, you didn't, because the moment you got up after praying, you still stressing over it.
Come on.
Picked it back up.
You picked it
And
back up.
and because most of it is unconscious.
Yes.
So it is, you're still carrying it with you everywhere you go.
Everywhere you
You
go.
might have suppressed it from your conscious mind, but unconsciously, honey, it's still there. And then too, I like to tell people, but if we are a spirit, remember we are a spirit, soul, and body.
Yes.
You cannot separate the three. God wants us to be whole in all three areas.
All three areas.
That's right.
And the other thing is, studies show now what it's up to 90% of physical illnesses can be traced back
The
to,
mental illness.
yes,
Mm,
or emotional stress,
mm,
something.
mm.
So that's why I think, and this, to me, these are things that we need to talk about even in the church.
Yes.
This is the kind of information people, so they can make those connections.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that is probably, I don't know about you two, but that's probably my biggest challenge with people and getting clients is also, I've had people tell me, I know I need counseling, or but I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just scared. I just don't want to do it. And I say, I understand. And it can be very scary. So yeah, that's the other challenge too.
And you know what I realized at times in talking to people, they answer their own questions. They
Absolutely.
saw when they just talk, you listen
Mm-hmm.
to them, and you ask those probing questions, and they start talking. They tell you what it is they need to be doing. So
Absolutely.
sometimes, if they understand something, you just need a sounding board
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes. And someone to help you process what it is
What it
you
is.
are
Exactly.
thinking and feeling.
That's right.
We call that gentle curiosity
Mm,
in trauma recovery coaching. Just gentle, by offering my gentle curiosity, like you said, you end up putting your own dots together and
right.
connecting the dots.
And
Yeah,
then once you do that, once you connect all these dots, okay, now we're going to put a plan in action to help you carry through on it.
right.
Call to action. You said you need to do this. So if you know that you need to do this, this is what we're going to do to help you do this, right? To get you
Absolutely.
through it. So
That's it.
it's a, but in the generation, we're going to have to wrap it up because we like
Oh,
it. Got about 2 minutes.
oh
Um,
wow.
the generational curses, right? And I know all of that comes like church hurt and sexual, when it comes to, because you carry that with you, like you said, when you um realize how it impacted you in throughout your life, and then maybe when you um have children, or however you're going, how do you break that generational curse?
Once again, I think it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
We've all had the situation where we say, when I grow up, I'm
Woo!
never going to be like
My
mama or daddy, or, you know,
Exactly.
and then one day you realize,
I'm
oh
just like
my
her.
goodness, because it's on a non-conscious level.
Mhm.
So self-awareness means I am consciously observing these things, these patterns, these thought patterns, these emotional patterns that I want to change. So it starts with self-awareness and always honesty, like we talked about before, being willing to be real about the reality and what the truth is. And a lot of times we built up so many defenses, you
Mhm.
know, that it takes someone to sort of help you, uh, you know, brick by brick, dismantle that wall,
Mhm.
Mhm.
that you built up for protection, but now it has become a hindrance.
Mm.
And even in that, when you talk about breaking down the wall, um, because some people say, well, if I take down all of my walls, then I'll just be open.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about leaving you open.
No.
We're not talking about leaving you to a point that you're vulnerable. We're
Right.
Mhm.
talking about taking down the dysfunctional wall and rebuilding your life. So the
Yes.
walls and the boundaries that you will learn to enforce and to open up into your life will be that new wall. The new
Hmm.
walls will be those that are healthy
Oh
walls
yes.
and
Come on.
healthy
Healthy
boundaries.
walls, healthy
It's,
boundaries. Yes.
yes,
So
exactly. I
mhm,
look at it as exchanging
mhm,
defensiveness for boundaries.
Mm.
correct, correct.
Yes.
And even that, learn that is a process
It is.
of learning to be able to even know that it's okay for you to set healthy boundaries.
Yes.
It was a process for me to get to that place. But that's part of the joy of it, is being able to help people and, you know, walk people through that process of being able to get there. Um, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
joy.
I love our conversations, and I just love you so much.
Oh,
And
I
it's
love.
like it's never enough time, right? It's like
Yes.
such we got this big box. And I feel like we've opened the box. And you know how in the box you got all these little popcorns in it, and you got to pull all of this stuffing out just to get to the little box in the bottom of it.
Hmm.
That commercial. How many licks do it take to get to the Tootsie Roll?
Yeah. One, two,
You
three.
Right.
big old box, and it's never enough time. So we're gonna have to ask you to come back maybe in season 2 sometime, and we can continue and talk about it, because we really didn't get into the generational curses of it. Well, the curses, we touched it, but it's a lot, especially if you're a parent, and let's just say you see your child, and you may notice some things in your child, and you think, oh my gosh, they're like that because of me.
Hmm.
How do you now get to your child to say, hey, look, I think you need some help, because you know children really learn to they live what they learn. I think
Hmm.
isn't that how it goes? They learn what they live, or they live what they learn. It's one of those. It's a
Yeah.
Exactly. You're right. You're right.
They live what they learn. Yeah.
live
Right.
what they learn. So if
Mhm.
you grow up in a household, like you said, and your mom's always angry or whatever, then you learn that. And then that child might just be
Yeah.
angry all the time, not for any particular reason other than because that's what they saw.
And
So,
that's
Right.
their normal.
right,
That's
that's
their
the norm.
normal.
That's their normal.
Well,
And
I
when
was.
you ask about how do we get to the children, the funny thing is that we tend to want to sometimes, even as parents, when we recognize or we see things in our children, even though we know we're the source, we try to get our children some counseling. We need family counseling. It
Okay.
is a system.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
a system. You can't fix part of the car when it's a whole part that needs to be fixed. But you say, "Oh, I don't want to fix that whole part. I'm gonna take a part out and fix this part of it," and you expect the car to work. It's gonna work for a little while, but
Right.
eventually it's gonna break down again because you needed to replace the whole
The
part.
whole thing. Okay.
Mhm.
So
got
the
you.
whole system has to be changed. The whole system has to come to a point where everyone is receiving counseling. Everyone is working through their stuff.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Like you said, and if we live what we learn, then I always tell mothers, the best thing you can do for your children is you start doing your work. You be the example. They're
Okay.
going to follow your example, especially
That's
if your children are grown,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, you model it. Just like we model the dysfunction, we
Exactly.
can model we can model healing and recovery, what healing and
Yes,
recovery look like.
Okay.
So
Great.
there is hope. And I will be happy to come back anytime because like I told y'all, I'm an honorary cousin.
That's right.
So
definitely.
this is just the beginning of this
Yes.
relationship and collaboration.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am. Yes,
I
it is.
believe that.
Yes.
Well, again, we have had a great show.
Absolutely.
And before we leave, I just want to make sure that we point out some key things that we talked about today. So we talked about church hurt. We talked a little bit about the sexual trauma and generational trauma associated with church hurt or associated with life in general. But the
Mhm.
most important takeaways we want you to get today is that you have to become self aware. You have to acknowledge and accept the problem, the situation, your hurt, your disappointments, your offense. You have to do that. And in order for you to move past, you then have to be able to say, this is what has happened to me. I am angry. I am upset because why? Identify it. And then the work to then scream, it's okay, gain your voice. So in all of this, we kept talking about how people feel like they can't say something.
Mm-hmm.
We empower you to gain your voice.
Yes.
Talk about it, scream it out, write it out, whatever your voice looks like. We
Mhm.
empower you to gain your voice. And in that, once you're able to gain your voice, you're able to sit back and look and say, what happened and how did this impact me? Now that I know how it impacted me, let me move a little further and put some action to that to make a change. So, with all of that, we want you to be empowered to not allow yourself to stay in the hurt, to stay in the pain, but instead, we want you to allow yourself to use your awareness to move through the pain and to get to the other side of healing and
Yes.
productivity and functioning in a healthy life. We have
Yes.
enjoyed you today.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank
And,
you. I
and
love
we,
y'all so much.
Yes. We love
yes, we
you
love
too.
you too.
So we're gonna get, like I said, you got to come back in season 2. So this is our season finale, folks, and we just want to say, oh my gosh, thank you so much to our viewers and
Yes, we
all
love
of
you.
yes, and we love you, and we are going to be working on some things. We're gonna revamp, and we coming back in season 2 with a vengeance, y'all.
Yes, yes.
I
And we
love that
want you
new
to
intro
enjoy
too.
the
Thank you.
holidays. We
Yes.
want you to enjoy your holidays. And if you don't celebrate holidays for whatever reason, we want you to make sure that before 2022 ends, that you take time to love yourself and love your family and love others. And we just want you to end this year with a bang, and we will be coming back with a bang in 2023.
Yay! All right, we'll be watching.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.